Welcome in, Slumpbusters. It is your host, Juju and Kyle Ledbetter. Before we move any further, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Joining us today, the Vice President and Content Director of CLNS Media and host of the Garden Report, we bring you John Zannis as we put the final nail in the coffin of the 2022 Brooklyn Nets. John, I know you were a little cautious heading into the series, pump the brakes a little on the hype. At what point did you know the Celtics weren't looking back?
I love how that's and guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, Kyle, Julian. It's funny, that's the reputation that follows me around here. You know, I know you put it as cautious, the people in our chat will call me the pessimist, but it wasn't so much about whether the Celtics would win it, because I actually did predict the Celtics would win the series. I think like most people just thought it was going to be really competitive. And in fact, it was competitive for a sweep. It was the third closest sweep in NBA history in terms of point differential. So I've seen 7-game series more lopsided than this, but that's beyond the point. My feeling was Brooklyn was the only team the Celtics could play in the first round that I thought had a puncher's chance of beating the Celtics, whereas I didn't think any other team did. Push came to shove. I'd say the other reason for some caution was you really wanted to see the Celtics. It's not the Celtics needed to prove it all over again, but you needed to see them play competitive games in tight fourth quarters and execute when the stakes are really big without their full lineup. And there was something we needed to see first in order to have confidence they would do it. I would say, even though the games were relatively close and, game one, they maybe sort of, could have, should have lost. Game two, again, they're down 17 points. Their ability to come back and to close and to out execute teams in the fourth quarter was easily the most important thing I think that happened in that series from a Celtics fan perspective that you have to feel really good about. Is these are games, not only were they losing in the first 45 plus games of the season, all of last year too, and in fact dating all the way back to the bubble against Miami in the conference finals there, where they just blew lead after lead after lead. That kind of felt like it was in the Celtics DNA, and it's not anymore. They out execute, out hustle, outperform teams in the fourth quarter, and they did it in each game here with Brooklyn. Every time Brooklyn countered, Celtics had something, and that was really impressive. So I would say after game two, the short answer, yes, you felt, wow, they snuck out that first one. Then they came back from 17 points down to win game two. I just think they're going to find a way to win whatever. That being said, I did think Brooklyn was going to maybe sneak out a game, but I think the sweep was definitely within the realm of possibility once they left Boston.
You're better than me. I think I saw in your post game, you said you picked them in 6. I picked them in 7. So I took a more cautious approach than even you did. But part of the story, obviously, for the Celtics has just been the defensive renaissance since January. They have 106.7 defensive rating, which is first in the NBA. And honestly, like really good in a historical context as well. Fill in the blank here. How good is this Celtics defense? How good is it since insert blank?
I know a lot of people will put the bad boy Pistons teams in here. I don't like making historical comparisons with this team. I just know that this year for this moment in this league, they're really freaking good because the switchability, what Ime came in trying to do at the beginning of the year with playing all of those switches, they were botching that. They were having a really difficult time communicating. Things weren't working for them. And at some point it clicked. And I think a lot of it had to do with Marcus Smart kind of had a real turnaround, kind of, I wouldn't say change of heart, but I really do think he got spooked by the trade deadline rumors and did a total about face where, at his best, Marcus Smart is the player you see right now. Most times he's kind of this erratic guy that has driven people mad over the course of a 6-7 year career with his inconsistencies, gambling, turnovers, jacking too many threes. But Marcus turned it up a notch. Jaylen and Jayson finally bought in. And again, I think that's the thing is you have these guys physically who, when they want to play defense, are incredible defenders, both Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, both as team defenders and individual defenders. I feel like they bought in and around that time too. And then Ime made that one switch where he took Rob out of the middle, put him on the non-shooting wing, and let him kind of play free safety on that defense, wreak havoc, and just come in all over the place and block shots out of nowhere. And that completely changed the complexion of the defense and of the season. I mean, you talk about that defensive rating. They had a stretch there where their defensive rating with their starting five on the floor was something like 92 or something obscene. So that starting five was just suffocating. They were just putting teams lights out early. And it looked like there'd be six guys. That's the thing that's most impressive. Because of all of the switching, wherever you go, there's another guy there. It feels like you're playing defense against 6 or 7 guys when it's running at its best. And that's what Brooklyn ran into. That's the reason Kevin Durant got passive. It wasn't because he quit. It's because everywhere he went, there was another guy there. And it's just kind of like you open a door and there's another one, like he couldn't get free ever. And after a while, it gets demoralizing. And I really do think they kind of just, eventually over time, just wear teams down with it. So again, historically, I don't know where it stands, but it's the best defense in the NBA right now. And there's not a lot of flaws with it. Like they can defend any type of lineup, any type of team.
So let's talk about Tatum for a second, because I've thought that part of the defensive increase for the Celtics was the fact that Tatum is now not quite an all-NBA defender, but pretty really close to an all-NBA defender. And obviously he's clearly the number one. He's scoring 27 points a game. And the thing that was most interesting after game one was when he put up 31 and had the game winner. It's like that can be replicated every night from Jayson Tatum. It's not a 45 pointer to win any game in this series. It was always just 39 here, 31 there, 28 over here. So how do you feel about how Tatum has evolved, I guess over the last year or so, but I guess more specifically kind of in the last 2 months where the Celtics went from, like, as I said, middle of the road team in the East to championship contender?
Yeah. Tatum's another one that's super interesting because I know he's Boston's own. You drafted him. Everybody here feels great about it because you pulled the fast one over Philly and you dropped down to 3 and took the guy you wanted and got more stuff out of it and blah, blah, blah. So he's a massive victory just because of what the Celtics were able to pull off just to get him here. But I mean, there are stretches of his game that I think were frustrating at times. And people would always, the knock on him early, like at the beginning of the year when he was shooting poorly and the team wasn't playing well, was the guy only cares about his stats. And I never agreed with that. I always thought that he knew one way to impact the game, and that was give me the ball, let me do my thing, and let me cook, so to speak. And like when he finally let go of that, he realized like, oh, not only if I give the ball up, might I get it back, but like not always having the ball in my hands and doing other things. It's a much more effective way to affect winning. And so he started doing the other things to affect winning. And I think it kind of took, but like it wasn't happening for a while. It really was this strange kind of, switch that got flipped there where you saw him start to, share the ball a little bit more and distribute. And again, that's what Udoka said coming through. 2 things he wants: play your ass off on defense, share the ball. I don't give a crap what else happens. That's all. Those are the 2 things I need. As soon as he started doing that, it was easier for everyone to start doing that. Part of that was letting Marcus run the point a little bit more and not having the ball as much in Tatum's hands necessarily, just to isolate and get out of the way. Tatum making quicker decisions with the ball, making the right pass. I mean, he made some elite passes last game and it's just easy. I mean, even one that comes to mind, little spin move on Kyrie, and then just kind of instantly sees Horford there with someone 6'2" guarding him in the post and just floats it to him for a gimme layup. I mean, these are things that he's recognizing these things so quickly. So between the distributing and then just upping the intensity on defense, he impacts the game in every way instead of just the previous Tatum was, he can drop 45 on you anytime. I mean, the best versions of Tatum we saw is when he went on those runs where he was just knocking down 40, 45, 50. And we've seen that from him. And now you're seeing kind of complete package sort of games from him. It's he's going to finish first team all NBA. And it's because of all that other stuff. It's not just because of his scoring.
You mentioned a guy that's going to be instrumental in the Celtics success. That's going to be Robert Williams. And every Celtics fan, including myself, was relieved to see him back in game 3. In game 3, he looked explosive. He kind of looked like old Rob. But in game 4, I don't know if it was just me, but I felt like he wasn't great at finishing at the basket. I felt like the Nets were beating him to the punch there. Did you kind of notice that? How did you feel about him coming back off a month layoff? And what do you project for him in the Milwaukee series?
He looks off, like his timing. So I think getting those 2 games, it was almost best case scenario. They were winning without him. They put him in a low pressure situation. He was coming off the bench. I think they were going to consider upping his minutes in game 2. wasn't really working. The Grant lineup was working a bit better, and they kind of kept him at what they kept him as. But you're right. It's not eye-popping Robert Williams yet. You're not seeing that stuff where his just athleticism affects the game in so many different ways. He looks like his timing is a little bit off where he's supposed to be reacting to things. A couple times he doubled when he shouldn't have doubled and, came off rather than stayed home. So I think it's just, like I said, I really think it's just a matter of rhythm and timing. I didn't look physical per se. He looked like he was moving relatively well. But I mean, again, best case scenario, 2 games under his belt to kind of get his legs under him in game action, plus 5-6 more games to kind of continue to ramp up conditioning and get ready. I'd be surprised if he's not back in the starting lineup for the Milwaukee series. I actually thought it was even possible they would have started him in game 4, his second game of his return against Brooklyn. I'm not super worried. I don't know if you guys are, if you saw something different.
So I'm interested in that because the defensive matchups for the Celtics are going to be interesting against Milwaukee. One of the things obviously Giannis is Giannis, and they might have 3 players like guarding him when he drives into the lane and all this interesting stuff. But Robert Williams is interesting for how they build out that defense. So going into that series, 1, how do you feel about that with the defensive matchup for the Celtics against the Bucks? And 2, how does Khris Middleton's injury kind of change things for Boston?
I'm curious what lineup the Bucks play because they've gone with Portis in the 2 games without Middleton. And so you're looking at Portis, Lopez, Giannis with Giroux, and who else were they starting in there?
They mixed in some Grayson Allen. I know he took over in that Bulls game. I don't know if he was in their starting lineup, but I know he played a lot.
I'm curious which lineup they go with. Rob makes a big difference. I mean, just in terms of how they're going to defend Giannis, it's just going to be a lot of bodies. I think both Horford and Rob can do a decent job keeping him in front of them. It's just going to be a foul situation that I think is really going to be the thing that you're most concerned with is if, Giannis draws a lot of fouls and the Celtics like to play aggressive. So how the series gets called. They played Wes Matthews a ton last game. That's who it was. Grayson Allen and Connaughton played a ton off the bench. So I'm curious if they stay with that lineup because it'll be interesting how the Celtics match up there. You probably end up with Tatum as the primary guy starting on Giannis. With a lot of help and a lot of people coming over. It is interesting, though, where Milwaukee defensively, where the Celtics are going to have their challenges is everyone can shoot. And that's a concern is you don't really have the luxury of having Rob just kind of float as he does. You kind of pick that non-shooting wing and put him there and you play off that guy and you help because you really do want help with Giannis going to the basket there. And Lopez can shoot it from the outside. Obviously, Portis can. And if they go with a smaller lineup, if it's Matthews or Connaughton in there or Grayson Allen, all of those guys can fill it up. So this is a team that shoots unlike any that, certainly, Brooklyn had some shooters as well. But this is where the series is going to come down to is if the Celtics can do all of their switching, help on Giannis and be able to throw bodies at him and make life tough on him, but also get out on the shooters. I'm curious whether Ime tries to play Giannis close to straight up. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think when he's going to the basket, they are going to bring some bodies, but I don't think they're going to double him at every opportunity. So it's really a matter of the 2 things. The fouls are going to play a big part in it and whether or not Celtics can get out on the shooters or if the Bucks get hot from there. On the flip side, the Middleton thing where I think it's going to be interesting is defensively, Milwaukee's going to have some major problems without Middleton in there. It really messes things up because who the hell is going to guard Tatum in that lineup that started last week? You might bump Giroux up there, but what are you going to do then? Put Wes Matthews on Jaylen Brown? There's going to be matchup problems there for them trying to guard Boston's wings, no matter who they put out there. They're not going to put Giannis on Tatum 20 feet away from the basket. It's just not what they want to do. They want Giannis closer to the rim to be able to protect. You saw in last year against the Nets, Giannis wasn't out there on the perimeter guarding Durant when he was going off and, keeping the Nets single-handedly in that series. So I don't think that's going to happen there. So without Middleton there, I really am curious how Milwaukee's going to match up defensively against Boston. I mean, obviously Middleton offensively hurts, not having him. I feel like he averages 70 points a game against the Celtics on like 95% shooting. He just doesn't miss, but the defensively, it's going to be really, and sneaky. Milwaukee was sneaky bad defensively this year for a team that you would expect to be better. They did not have good defensive numbers all season. I know they had some injuries in and out, but I think they're going to have challenges. They're going to have a tough time matching up with the Celtics.
I agree with you there. That's one of my primary concerns with the Milwaukee Bucks is when you compare that to the Nets, let's face it, they have a much better bench than the Nets did. I know they don't have the ghost of Blake Griffin coming off their bench, but the Milwaukee Bucks, they have a damn good bench. I mean, Grayson Allen, like I said, he took over that Bulls game a couple nights ago. Yep. You look at Brook Lopez. I've seen Brook Lopez put some numbers up on the Celtics too in games before. These guys are guys that kind of concern me. So I'm kind of curious to see how that like defensive chess game goes, because Kevin Durant, much different player than Giannis. And like you mentioned, he could draw some fouls and put some pressure on the Celtics that way. Certainly taking Tatum or anyone else to the cup is going to be interesting to see how the Celtics build that wall. Can they build that wall? What do you think is going to be the primary change from how they defended the Nets to how they defend the Bucks?
That's a good question. And again, I am curious just how they match up. I'm also curious on the lineups, but it really just comes down to whether they decide, I'm going to let Giannis get his and play it straight up because I don't want their shooters to go wild, or I'm going to throw everybody I have at Giannis, and if the other shooters beat me, they beat me. I think it makes more sense to play Giannis as close to straight up as you can, because you really don't want that to happen. Like I said, they have so many shooters. They have so many shooters all over the floor. That's how they're going to beat you. And I just don't think you just want to be, just leaving Bucks open for threes all game long. So I am curious how it goes. It really comes down to how they choose to defend Giannis.
So on the flip side, the offensive matchup for the Celtics against the Bucks defense, last year in the finals, I love talking about how when Jrue Holiday switched on to Chris Paul, it felt like the series changed a little bit because they stopped looking for offense from Holiday and started using his defense ability. And it felt like the series changed in part there, and Giannis was playing awesome. So in this series, it looks like Jrue Holiday is going to be stuck on Jaylen Brown for pretty much the entire series. Jaylen Brown had an above average series against the Nets, I suppose. It wasn't necessarily super flashy, but how do you feel about Jaylen Brown's performance so far? And how do you feel about him matching up against Jrue Holiday?
Again, the Holiday's a good defender. So that's his goal, is to erase, one of the other team's better players. You're going to run into that from time to time. I think Jaylen Brown can create his own offense regardless, just because he's super athletic and he can, and he's strong and he can get to the cup. So I know Holiday will make it tough for him, but he can still come off screens. He can still hit his shots. I think that'll be fine. I just really don't know how they're going to match up with Tatum. That's going to be the major problem. That's fine if you have a guy who takes away your second best option, but what are you going to do with that guy there? And my guess is there's going to be a lot of doubling on Tatum as well, but that's going to leave other guys open. It might leave Jaylen open. So I'm not really sure, but hats off to Holiday. Holiday is their smart on defense. He's a pest. He's physical. He's strong. He plays 94 feet. He's awesome. I'm a huge Jrue Holiday fan. So, he's a big check mark in the Bucks column. He's a terrific point guard. He had a really good shooting season from deep. And he's potentially a first team all NBA defender. So yeah, he's a challenge. He's going to be a challenge, and whoever he matches up against, as you said, most likely Jaylen, it's going to be hard for him. As far as what kind of series Jaylen had, I thought Jaylen had a good series. He's just got to clean up the sloppy stuff. It's all about forcing the issue with him. This part of the problem is he plays fast. And the faster he plays, the more likely he is he's going to do something like dribble it off his knee. I mean, his handle's always been a little bit loose. So he's just got to stay composed. If Holiday presents a challenge and he's tough to beat, just don't force the issue. You don't want to force your way into turnovers, especially when you're playing against a really difficult defender. If you have opportunities, take them. If not, move the ball, get to a different spot, try to make a difference. Moving without the basketball, I think, super important for the Celtics too. Sometimes they kind of get locked into place. But yeah, I think, the Holiday Brown matchup is going to be an interesting one to watch.
Against the Nets, we saw Peyton Pritchard step up. We saw Grant Williams step up. We saw Daniel Theis step up. So a lot of key role players off the Celtics bench. Who do you think could be that difference maker against the Milwaukee Bucks?
I don't know. It's a good question. I like Pritchard for his shooting because that's just what he does. If he can come in here and knock down shots, I think that's super important. Still waiting for Derek White to kind of, consistently bring something offensively when he's running a second unit offense. Just getting to the rim a little bit more and hitting some of those floaters and just creating a little bit more offense. I think he'd be super important. I think he's just a super important player here in general, just because what he does for them defensively. So no matter what, he's just another guy with, athleticism and size that you can throw at the Bucks there and is going to defend his position really well. And then I'm naming everybody on the bench, but Grant is an interesting one here because he had such a good series, but there's some size issues here. And this is a type of team that Grant might have a tougher time against because everyone he's going to come in again, there's going to be some length and size that he's going to have to contend with. So I'm a little, I wouldn't say worried, but there might be times where Grant might get played off the court just simply because of those issues. He's going to have a role here, but I am curious how he's going to handle it here. So they really only have those guys. I mean, that's as deep as they go. So you need contributions for all of them. I don't know if any one of them is more poised to step up than any other, but they go 8 deep and that's it. I mean, I guess 9 now that Williams is back. So Tice is in that mix in the bench there. They're going to need all of them here, especially, you know, because like I said, is you need to throw a lot of bodies at Giannis, which could mean a lot of fouls, which could mean, you know, Tice, Grant, all of those guys, they're going to have to come in there. They're going to have to body up and they're going to have to do their best.
The winner of Bucks versus Celtics is going to be who?
Oh, you know, I don't give that out. Not this early.
Not before Chicago gets eliminated in 4 hours.
No. Yeah, I'm going to make it because I make the Garden Report people wait for it too. I'm formulating my thoughts here.
I love the embargo of the thoughts. I can absolutely get behind that.
Yeah, no, I have my brand to protect. No, I haven't done it yet because I haven't fully formulated it. And honestly, I just started digging in on the Bucks. It's just interesting. Like, you can throw everything from the regular season out with the Celtics. Nothing matters. The last game they played up there, which actually was encouraging because they played it without Tatum, Horford, and Robert Williams. They were extremely competitive and almost won it in a game Milwaukee went balls out for trying to win. And I think it was 127-121. The other 3 games were Christmas or earlier, where the Celtics were a totally different team. First one the Celtics won had no Giannis and no Middleton on the other side. There were players missing on both sides. But again, the Celtics as currently constituted have not really faced the full Bucks team. So we have no clue how they face off. You can't say like, oh, they played them well during the season. It doesn't matter. You know, if you take anything from that last game, the fact that they were competitive with missing 3 out of 5 starters, I think bodes pretty well because you did get a sense of like, this is what Milwaukee's about. But playoffs will be totally different. And again, playoff Giannis, man, what he did last year was so freaking impressive. So I just knock him, like, whatever it is you think about the matchups, you just have to step back and be like, the players matter. And like the stars, of course they do, but like maybe more so than you can calculate when you just look at the series matchups and like just the will to do whatever it takes to just get you this far ahead to get the win. And Giannis clearly has it. And the Celtics are starting to kind of show it too. So that's what I'm most interested to see there. You can't discount the Giannis factor and the fact that he'll just put a team on his back and just will them to victory. And he's so freaking impressive. I mean, I know everyone has their MVP arguments and their MVP debates, and I know Jokic is probably going to win it, but I give it to Giannis. I think he's the most important player. I think he's the most valuable player in the league. He's one of the best offensive players in the league, and he's an all defensive player. I just don't know how you bet against this guy. So it's difficult. He's amazing. And, go Greece. I'll throw that plug in as well. I have a small Giannis bias as well. So it's hard to make a pick just yet, but I am formulating it. I'll have it for the Garden Report crew, I promise, before the series begins, but I don't have it exactly yet. I did say, I'll tip my hand a little. I did say if the Celtics got past round 1, I would have a hard time picking against them the rest of the way.
Okay, John. Okay.
The only thing I was not bullish on in round 1 was the non-Rob factor and, it being the Nets. And I thought they had a puncher's chance to come away with it, but a full Celtics squad with everybody healthy, I'll have a hard time picking against them the rest of the way.
So jumping in the deep end, it sounds like, you were, waiting around in the pool a little bit, but now just full on dive in. Okay. Bleed green. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
It's hard not to. I wouldn't say it took a while, but like, it was almost hard to fathom what they were doing in the second half of the season. And like, you couldn't tell if it was real. Like, in some cases they're beating teams that didn't have their best players, but they're also beating them by like 50, and then after a while, you're just like, oh my goodness, they're this good. They are killing people. So again, the last version we saw of this team with everybody fully healthy was absolutely demolishing teams. I mean, it didn't matter who it was. Playoff caliber teams, they were beating them by 30. So again, I'm hoping Rob gets all the way right, or as close to it as he's going to get, this soon after surgery. And if that's the case, it's just the way they were playing. It's just, they're a really difficult team to play against. It doesn't matter who you are.
Okay. So for fans to check out your cautious take heading into the next series?
Cautious.
Give all the plugs for the Garden Report. Where can we find all the great content you guys do?
So thank you. Yeah, if anybody is out there, Celtics fan, or any Boston sports for that matter, we have a lot of different content there. But CLNS Media, we have multiple YouTube channels there that you can check out a lot of our video content. Celtics All Access, Patriots Press Pass, tons of stuff there for the NFL draft coming up as well. And CLNS Media, just main YouTube channel where we do our post-game shows live after every game, usually about 90 minutes, maybe sometimes longer, streaming to an audience of the thousands actually of people who join in and watch and join the chat. It's a fun community that people like to, jump in on. The chat is lit the whole time. Most of it is people yelling at me for being negative. And that's fine. I can take it. I'll play the villain if that's the case, but it's a really fun time. It's a good community. It's a lot of very knowledgeable Celtics fans who jump in there and just like to hang out after the games and chop it up with us and chat. So again, CLNS Media, check out our YouTube page, check us out at clnsmedia.com, follow us at Celtics CLNS on Twitter. And that's how you find us.
All right. Hoping you're not the last Celtics guest I get to bring on before this postseason comes to an end.
So you're a Celtics fan?
Absolutely. Die hard. But, Kyle's the Celtics hater. That's how we balance out this podcast. That's how we kind of have an even discussion.
How did that happen?
No, I've accidentally surrounded myself with Celtics fans in my life, and I've made a mistake doing it because now I get rid of Celtics hate because I like to piss on everyone's happiness.
Yeah.
I root for the beloved Sacramento Kings up here. So
that's nice.
Exactly. So it boils over.
Well, let me ask a quick question before you wrap it, Julian.
All right.
So give me your pessimistic Celtics take then, as a person who's got Celtics hate.
All right, my pessimistic Celtics take, or you're asking Kyle.
I'll take Kyle's because Kyle's the hater.
Okay, let's get Kyle.
Because I'm the hater. I felt that first of all, the Celtics don't even have the best defense in the NBA this year, but that's the Golden State Warriors. Also,
that's fine because Golden State played without Draymond for all of those games. I get it.
Yeah. That one, I think that the Boston Celtics at the start of the year, I said they were like the 6 or 7 seed in the Eastern Conference. And then the second half of the season, I'm like, I was wrong. They are better. They are about the 4th or 5th best team in the East. If you want to argue Miami, I was willing to listen to it. And then they beat Brooklyn. And now I have a newfound level of respect for that defense. And at the same time, Bucks in 5.
Wow. I like it. So the whatever you just said there is a shred of what's always been in the back of my head, which is I can't unsee the things I've seen, which was how bad they were at the beginning of the year. And I've always had a difficult time, which is why through 20 so games of that 35 game run where they just lit the world on fire, I'm like, I still can't buy it, and just as I started to buy it, Rob got hurt. So like before I had a chance to really embrace, holy crap, they might be a wagon, that happened. So that's still there, a shred of it, but with each game and with each series, it's going to go further and further away. Brooklyn helped dispel that, but the Bucks in 5 is bold, and I think it's wrong, but that's okay.
The good news for them is that the Celtics are in this interesting place where having Tatum as your true number 1 is going to guarantee you at least a game. So the better bet would be to say like Bucks in 5.5, like whether it goes 5 or 6 is indifferent. I think the Bucks control the series most of the way. It's going to be really interesting to see how that works out though, because yes, the Celtics don't have the greatest offense, but having the short bench and having Tatum and Brown be 40% of your offense is more conducive to success in the playoffs.
And again, the counter to that would be the Celtics don't have the greatest offense, except for the second half of the year where they have the number 1 offense. So it's which do you believe, the aggregate or do you believe the recent, and that's again, this is where people are struggling evaluating the Celtics is, are they this super team that killed everybody late that is number 1 in defense and number 1 in offense? Or is it kind of a combination of everything we've seen? I think you still think combination.
It's all on Tatum. It all comes down to Tatum. That's the part where I'm struggling to get by it because I think he might be like the 4th or 5th best player in his generation. If you take it behind Giannis and Embiid and Jokic and maybe Devin Booker, but I love Devin Booker. Like, that's really good. And historically speaking, you lose to the teams that have a star better than your star, but maybe Jayson Tatum's turning into a star of his generation.
So
like maybe that's changing in front of our eyes.
Pierce to Giannis's LeBron, maybe
something like that. Or I guess in the past it would have been Westbrook versus Curry or something of those sorts. Like, he's incredible and he can beat teams that don't have one of the 4 best players in the NBA. I'm just interested to see what happens. I mean, he beat Kevin Durant, so that, that's a step in the right direction for Tatum's point.
Didn't just beat him.
Yeah.
He outplayed him start to finish and locked him up. It was pretty impressive.
And 5 years from now, we'll say now we say the Celtics beat the Nets, and 5 years from now we'll say Jayson Tatum beat Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant will be 39 and Tatum will be in his prime, and that'll be bonus points for Tatum in his development as growing into his physical prime. I don't know exactly. I think physical prime of basketball players is like 25 to 30, but he's entering that right about
27,
now.
28.
And actually, before you even got on here, John, we were having the discussion. Was it just bad Nets? Was it just bad Kevin Durant? Or was it really good Celtics? I guess I lean more on the really good Celtics, because I just look at how quickly they switch on defense, their length, their size, how they were up on Durant on every single possession. And I think it's a lot more explainable than Kevin Durant just having a bad series just because he was missing shots. I think that the Celtics did everything in their power to cause him to miss shots, and that's why they had the series they had.
Celtics recognized nobody else could beat them than those guys. And Brooklyn just had too many personnel issues. They were damned no matter what. I remember Steve Nash gave a halftime interview in game 3 or 4, and they're like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, when we go big, they friggin', they attack us. And when we go small, they couldn't, no matter what they did. If, they went big to match up size, so they didn't give up too many offensive rebounds. But if they went to small, the Celtics were just friggin' killing them on the glass. If they went big, they would target their bigs in isolation on switches and get Blake Griffin on a switch, on a pick and roll, and just go to work. They couldn't do anything. No matter what, every lineup the Nets put out there, the Celtics could exploit. It was a team thing. I know everyone will look at Tatum and Durant. The Celtics, too much. The Nets could only win if Durant and Kyrie caught fire, like bananas.
Part of, I think, my pissing on Celtics fans' joy right now is that, historically speaking, in the NBA, with a few exceptions, team ball usually ends up falling at the end to the team that has the generational superstar. Yes.
Yep. But that's the thing. The Celtics might have one, and so that's kind of where
there are exceptions you can point to. There are a few exceptions throughout.
The Celtics might have a generational superstar, and that's the other thing. Or they might have somebody who's in that conversation very clearly, and that's what differentiates them a little bit. Sometimes you don't know it. You assess what you know now, but then you look at it 2 years later and you'll be like, oh my God, of course they won with those guys on the team, because you didn't see, I this will date me, but like the 2001 Patriots had one of the greatest Super Bowl upsets of all time, beating the Rams. And everyone's like, who are these these spunky guys? And then a couple of years later, you're like, oh my God, there was a crap ton of good players on that team. You just didn't fully realize it at the time. So like, yes, of course you realize Tatum and Brown are good, but Williams and blah, blah, blah. And, and how good Tatum is and just how good Brown is, like to speak for the Celtics, this could be the coming out in the sense of like, yeah, we're going to be the shit for the next few years. We're just going to, showing everybody, what's happening right now. I'm interested to see where it goes. Cause you're right. If you lose, they're going to look to Tatum and be like, well, you got outplayed by Giannis. Giannis was better than you, and that's why you lost. They are a team now, and it might be a team failure, but you're right. You're going to point to the superstars if it goes south for the Celtics.
All right, John. I hate to wrap it on you. Hate to end it, but once again, guys, follow at John_Zannis, or find all of their content on CLNS Media on Twitter. From Juju Talk Sports and Kyle Ledbetter, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.